welcome everybody. This is our final webinar in the Land to Lake lecture series with the Cannon River Watershed Joint Powers Organization. I'm Ryan Lerman. I'm the Ag and Natural Resource Extension Educator in Rice and Steele County. I want everybody to know we are recording this webinar today. We will be sending out a follow-up email, and that'll have a link to the recording as well. If you have any questions during the presentations, just use the Q&A function in Zoom, and then we'll answer those at the end. Also, for today's webinar, we're going to be talking about the state of the Cannon. We're joined today by Emmie Scheffler from Rice County Soil and Water District, and also Ashley Gallagher with Dakota County Soil and Water District. And so with that, I'll turn it over to you, Emmie.
Thanks, Ryan. My name is Emmie Scheffler, and like Ryan said, I'm with the Rice and Water District. I am also the administrator for the Cannon River Watershed Joint Powers Organization. The board cannot hire staff, so they contract with me to do that role as the day-to-day with the grant, management, all of that, and then I'll let Ashley quickly introduce herself.
Yes, hi, Ashley Gallagher. I'm the district manager at Dakota, but the role that I serve with the Cannon Joint Powers Organization is a technical and cost share role, so a lot of tracking of data and the projects that we're doing. And Emmie's going to take us through the first part of our slides, and then I'll jump back in.
Okay, can everyone see that? Or Ashley, can you see that? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so we just kind of want to go through a background of the Cannon itself, then go into what we've been accomplishing so far, and then we'll just jump into where we're going in the future. A little bit about background about us is in 2013, the local government water roundtable decided that they wanted to focus on watershed planning by boundaries, not by counties itself. It used to be each county had a watershed plan, but you think about it, water doesn't just stop at the county line. So this is where these one watershed, one plans came from. And there are 61 watershed one plans across the state. As you can see from the map, it is the blue areas are still in the planning process. The green are completed and have been implementing the projects and the plan. Some of them have been implementing longer than others. There's a few that are almost, I believe, to their 10 years. And then there's some that are maybe a year or so off the ground running. So background on the Cannon itself, we started our planning process in 2016 and the plan was approved in June of 2020. The final plan can be found at our website. There's a link attached to this. Otherwise, if you just type in our website and on top, you can navigate to the plan. It's about 200 some pages if you ever want to look at that. The CRWJPO, so the Cannon River Watershed Joint Powers Organization, was formed in 2019 as a result of the plan to implement it. And policy members had selected the Joint Powers Board to implement the plan. There's a couple different routes people can go with memorandums of agreement, and it was decided to do a Joint Powers Board as a new entity. The members for the Cannon River Watershed Joint Powers Organization are Rice County and Soil and Water, Dakota County Soil and Water, Seward County and Soil and Water, Steele County Soil and Water, Waseca County and Soil and Water, Goodhue County and Soil and Water, and then there's the Bell Creek Watershed District. That, as you can see on the image, is located over in Goodhue County, and then the North Cannon WMO, that is located in Dakota County. So as you can see, there's 14 members. It's a pretty big area that's on this board and a pretty big planning area. A breakdown of the Cannon watershed itself. It is 963,717 acres. Like I said, it encompasses 6 counties. 51% of it is agriculture. 10% was in the metro area, and the metro area is considered Dakota County. There's 2 main rivers. There's the Cannon and the Strait. Those meet up in Faribault area. And there's 800 linear miles of total length of water courses. You can see the breakdown of what percentage covers the different counties. Rice County has the most of the Cannon at 27.8%, all the way down to Waseca has the least amount at 5.2%. And then we do have some pretty distinctive lobes. You look at some watersheds and some are straight ag or straight forest, and we have unique 4 different sections. We have the Straight River, which is agricultural land area, and that is in Steele County area more. We have the Upper Cannon, that is Waseca County, LeSueur County, and the western portion of Rice County. And that's our lakes and wetlands area. That's where we have a lot of focus on storage and wetland restoration. We have the Middle Cannon, that's around Faribault area, Northfield area, Rice County, and that is the urban land use. And then we have the Lower Cannon, that's towards Goodhue County more, and that's more of that forested land in the bluff region that we see. And then for funding, we do receive most of our funds from the state with the Clean Water Land and Legacy Amendment, and those are considered WBIF, they're called, Watershed-Based Implementation Funding. Those are calculated based across the state on your watershed size. So as you can see, we've got grants in 21, 23, and 25. And so we get grants every 2 years. And so our current amount we get is a little over 1.5 million. As a joint powers board, we can also charge dues. There are some items in our plan that we identified implementing, and for example, a flood study or lake management plans. However, we're not allowed to pay for those with our state dollars. So that is where our dues come in, is for items like that, along with, for example, we're going to start sampling lakes, all the lakes. So that's where our dues go towards. We've also received a couple other grants for specific activities, CRP incentive funds through the state to help incentivize CRP signups. We received a grant for education outreach on the Upper Cannon flood study, which I'll cover more later. We did some algal bloom sampling with MPCA this last year, and those were on one lake in Waseca County, Lake Billsby, Cannon Lake, and Roberts Lake in Rice County. And then we've also done some water sampling through MPCA to help with their 10-year cycling of how the watershed is doing.
Step back in here. Just want to point out that the Cannon River is a resource that is near and dear to my heart. I may work in Farmington in Dakota County, but I live in Dundas, right on the Cannon River. So get to see the impacts of our work on a day-to-day basis. I'm guessing that most people are here today to hear about our water resources. Our plan does address more than just water. There is habitat and soil components, and as resource professionals, we know that they all tie together. But today I'm going to focus a tad more on the water side of it. I'll take a look at status of impairments, some of our goals from the plan, the progress, and some expectations that we can have for our watershed. So impairments, these are set by the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, and I do have another slide on that. But what we're looking at and what the state is looking at on that, Emmie mentioned the 10-year planning cycle, so we're doing intensive monitoring with the Pollution Control Agency every 10 years. But the Pollution Control Agency is assessing impaired waters every 2 years and then submitting that to the EPA. But you might have an affected use, and the uses throughout our watershed include aquatic life, aquatic recreation, aquatic consumption, and drinking water, and then the pollutant or stressor that is causing those affected use impairments. In our watershed, there are a lot related to excess nutrients, turbidity, E. coli, and mercury. Mercury is more atmospheric and hard for us to address, but excess nutrients is one that our plan definitely has activities related to that, and a lot in the lakes region related to excess nutrients, and then turbidity all throughout the watershed, but a lot of activities related to addressing turbidity in our streams and kind of our Goodhue and Dakota lower lobe region is where we're going to address some of those concerns. So the list in 2024 for our watershed, Cannon had 196 impairments. And I'm going to show you a map of what that looks like next here. I'm not going to do a live demonstration, so you're welcome to scan this QR code or search for Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, the surface water data map, and it is interactive, so you can click around and see a bunch of information on each water body. When we say 196 impairments, there are like stream segments in there. So, the Cannon River itself will have a bunch of different segments that might be listed as impaired or not impaired. And you can see here that anything in red is going to be considered impaired. When you're on this map, you can click on that water body and it will show you what it is impaired for. So those uses that I just talked about and those stressors, that information will be available if you click further into the map. So I just invite people to play around with that and see what the impairments look like across our watershed. Next slide. So how this ties into the goals. As Emmie mentioned, we started this planning process in 2016. So, we were working with the data we had at that time. And we have a number of goals in the plan, but I'm just going to use maps because I feel like that is an easier way to communicate goals than numbers and tables. So these two maps here are directly from our plan, and they show the protection lakes that are targeted during this 10-year time frame. They're a little hard to see, but we have Rome Hills and Fish in LeSueur County, and then Kelly and Dudley in Rice, and then Beaver in Steele County. And these are considered protection lakes because they are not impaired. So we want to keep them in good condition. And then the next slide, we dive a little bit into our impaired water bodies that we're targeting in our 10-year plan. And for the lakes, that includes Hunt, Cedar, and Fox Lakes in Rice County. And part of the, there's a whole prioritization process that was done during the planning phase, but one of the items that rose to the top was that they are considered like a nearly barely water is what we call it. So essentially they are just, barely impaired. So if we target our projects in those areas, we would love to be able to see a project flip those lakes. So if you hear somebody say delisting, earlier I talked about that impaired waters list. If you're going to delist a lake, that's what that is meaning, is that it's going to be all of a sudden be meeting water quality standards and it's going to be removed from that impaired waters list. I'm going to little bit of a spoiler alert here. We have not delisted anything in the Cannon, and one of our key takeaways is going to be that all of this takes time. But there are some water bodies that are showing improving trends, and I believe even a creek in Rice County is being explored for delisting, but nothing to delist quite yet. So those are our impaired lakes on the left there, and then on the right are our impaired streams that are being targeted during this 10-year plan, and they're outlined in black. So you can see handful in the lower lobe. We have Trout Brook in Dakota. In Goodhue, we have Bell Creek, Little Cannon, and then part of Prairie Creek is in Goodhue and Rice, and then getting down into the Steele County area. Rush Creek and Medford Creek are priority streams to focus on. The shading in this map and the coloring comes from a model called HSPF. It's a watershed pollutant load model, and you can see the purple shows that they are a top 25% contributor for total nitrogen and total phosphorus. So that's why some of those streams rise to the top as a priority. And then the pink is going to be for total phosphorus, and then the blue is for total nitrogen. So that's where those numbers come from. You can also see a hint of the impaired uses on this map as well. So like Prairie Creek, you can see is green. So we have an impairment for aquatic life and recreation. Once again, these maps are in the plan if you want to go back and reference them. Those are our goals represented in geographical form. So how are we doing? I gave you a little hint of that already. It's going to take time, but we are implementing projects. They are in targeted areas, but also serving the watershed as a whole. We want to be transparent about this process as well. So there is a public facing map on our website. You can find this map and you can zoom in and out. You can click on projects and get a little bit more information about what they are. You can see we have some dots being scattered across the watershed. The red dots are cropland projects. There are some, like we label them as habitat here, but they're more of our shoreline native planting projects. There's septic projects on here, and then there's a handful of well sealing projects that you can see from this wide view. So I encourage you to go look at that map as well to see where projects are located. Next slide. So kind of some fun project highlights, to this date. So plan was approved 2020, took some time to get work plans and funding going. But with what we've received across the watershed, there's been over 72 structures installed. So this picture in the middle here is an aerial view of what some structures might look like. These are water and sediment control basins installed to prevent gully erosion in a crop field. Some other structures might be grass waterways, or we call them grade stabilization structures. They're structures. They're being built to manage water and hold back water and release it and prevent erosion. On the management side, there's over 1,500 acres of management practices. The most popular management practice is going to be cover crops. There's a picture of that there as well, interseeded into corn. You can see the cover crops are doing well there. What they're doing is addressing soil health broadly. But when we talked about excess nutrients as one of our stressors and pollutants, cover crops are a tool for holding the nutrients in the soil so that they don't leach or leave the field into our water bodies. So we have a lot of management practices going on in the watershed. There is prescribed grazing as well. Most of the prescribed grazing or any feedlot fixes are going to be primarily in the lower lobe, good hue. That's just where we see higher numbers of livestock and that type of farming system. And then well sealings, I pointed out, we do have a number of those. Majority are more in our lakes region. That's where those are targeted right now. And then shoreline plantings. We created a program that is native shoreline plantings. This is kind of an opportunity for people at any land scale and any land use to implement a little bit of conservation on their property. So I don't have a direct link to this, but I think some of our other webinars addressed this topic in greater depth. You can create a native shoreline planting as well, and we have a lot of those scattered primarily throughout our lakes region. And next. So we have been doing a lot of projects, tracking progress towards our goals, but just kind of want to lay some groundwork for what can be expected. Going forward, Emmie mentioned we do still have, I'm calling them adaptive lake management plans. So lakes are always changing, so we always have to be adapting. But a lake management plan is going to show us some of those complex interactions that occur with a lake and its watershed. So it will look at internal nutrient loading and external nutrient loading, and that'll help us better address our priorities. So if we still need to do a lot of watershed work, we'll be working on that. If there is excess internal loading, so that might mean that the lake sediments have a lot of phosphorus that's being released, then there's a different strategy to address internal loading. So those adaptive lake management plans, we've been working on those with Pollution Control Agency, and those should help us further prioritize our activities. I mentioned our nearly barely lakes. We're going to see changes there before we see changes in other places. So if we have a lake that is really green all the time, its nutrient loading is off the charts, it's going to take a lot of time before we're going to see any change within that lake. So just kind of setting that expectation for all of us as well. And then the 10-year planning cycle, Emmie talked a bit tonight too about the 10-year intensive water monitoring is going to occur, and then there's also a 10-year planning cycle. So we'll have an opportunity to take a look at the Cannon plan kind of as a midpoint check-in here. We're kind of in process of doing some of that right now. And then we do have an opportunity to take a look at that at the 10-year mark as well and make any adjustments that may be needed. So, one of my takeaways here is that everything will take time, which is hard, but we, do the things we can, and we prioritize our resources, and then we just track our progress over time. And what else? I think that was the last of my slides for the moment. Yeah, I can jump back in here towards the end.
So I'm going to jump back in and just talk about where we're going, kind of moving forward at the moment. Do want to touch on the Upper Cannon flood study. That has been a pretty hot topic with the flooding. And doing a flood study was identified in our plan. However, that was one of those items that we could not use that state funding for. So we would have to use dues. Flood studies are very costly, but we got lucky. LeSueur County applied for a FEMA grant, the FEMA Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, and they got that accepted. So that is paying for the study itself. We are paying so much towards the portion of match that was needed for that grant. So even though we couldn't pay for that study itself, we can pay for feasibility studies for wetland restoration sites. Basically, a feasibility study is an engineering plan on what can be done for a wetland restoration site to convert it back. So we paid for 4 different sites in the Upper Cannon on that. And then one actually received funding already through an additional state grant to have the work completed. That was in LeSueur County. We also got an RDSP grant, it's called, Regional Development Sustainability Partnership Grant through the CRWJPO. That is to develop the promotion outreach material. We are working with some students at the University of Minnesota. That way, once we have the study completed, we can hit the ground running on trying to get work completed. And then there was also an NRCS Watershed Protection and Flood Prevention Operation Program grant that is for more feasibility studies and opens up for some more NRCS funding. So there is work being done that is not all, but a lot of it's being funneled through the Cannon River Watershed Joint Powers Organization, since we already have an entity in place with all the government units that would be involved in this. There is no sense of making a new kind of partnership for it. And then just looking forward, as staff, we don't make the decisions alone. We do have a large work plan, huge plan that we can't fund everything with the money we get. So for that, we try to work with our partner agencies, Extension, MDA, Minnesota Department of Health, Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, a lot of the cities in the area. We sit down with them and try to figure out what are their priorities. that fit with our plan. And so every 2 years, we're planning out our work plan to try to keep everyone in mind. And our work plan that we set aside for every 2 years does change. We have stuff that comes up, say a city or a private has a large industrial well that wants to get sealed. We try to fit stuff in our plan, our work plan that was in our plan to try to meet our goals. We understand that some of the stuff, you know, doesn't come around often. We have to kind of take it when we can. So we try to make that work. We are going to be starting to lake sample. As Ashley talked, we have those nearly impaired lakes that we chose for priority lakes. There is it 90 some, Ashley? I believe there's 90 some lakes in the watershed. And we only were able to select our priority lakes based off what we had data for. So we are working with MPCA a list of who has data and who doesn't for our lakes, and trying to work with all of the lakes in the watershed to get them sampled. We need 2 summers of sampling for those. That way everyone can kind of be on a even playing field when we do look at our 10-year plan revision. Plan revision is possible at the 10-year mark. You know, if we make great progress towards our goal, we will be looking at making plan revisions on our different priorities. It may not happen though. Like I said, if we sample our lake, you might not still fit just because we have the data. It might not fit what is decided as a goal and as a priority. And so we'll have to just, it's always changing. And like I said, at the 10-year mark, we'll have to see, do we want new priorities? Do we want different types of concerns? You know, groundwater is becoming a large concern, so that may become more focused. We're not all quite sure yet until we get to that mark. So kind of some key takeaways, like Ashley said, you know, it takes time. It did not get dirty overnight. It will not get clean overnight. And then we all live downstream from someone, and we need to all do our part on it. And I'm actually gonna stop sharing this. And we came up with an education outreach campaign for the watershed. This video just was completed about a month ago. We like to play it for everyone. It really resonates that we all need to do our part in cleaning up the water everywhere, not just in the cannon. So let's see if I can get this going. Here. Can everyone hear it?
We are not getting audio.
Okay. Ryan, do you know how I can share audio?
I think it gets kind of tricky. Do you just have one screen, or do you have multiple screens?
I'm like, well, I have it on my monitor.
Yeah, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I guess I don't know the secret. Every computer's a little different, so.
Oh,
Do you want to try it, Ashley? I don't know.
I could see what I got here. I might have the same issues you're having. I'll give it one try. We're talking about the
The full
video. Yeah, the full video. Okay, let me pull that into a different screen. See if I can share it. I'm not allowed to share at the moment.
Oh, because probably I'm sharing. There we go. Why don't you try now?
Go ahead. Window. Here we go. Let's see if it works or not. You hear it or no?
Yeah, it's not coming through. Somebody in the Q&A mentioned that there might be something down there to be able to allow to share computer sound.
Or we could just tell everybody to go watch this. Should we go that route? I'll drop the link in the chat here. For viewing, actually, I'll just.
Oh wait, I figured it out. Okay. I figured it out now. Thank you, whoever said that.
Clean water really connects us all, right? Like, we're a very heavy water oriented state, so it's a really valuable resource for us.
Yeah, it's really important for lakeshore owners and farmers to think about the fact that we're all in this together.
This place, I bought it in 1986, got started. And first fall I went down there with the moldboard plow. You know, my dad was running the plow yet, and he plowed her deep. And the next spring we worked that up, and I had to fight to get it planted because it was so fluffy and soft, and struggled to grow a crop in that peat ground. Now today we have converted it to no-tilling soybeans and strip tilling, even adding cover crop in peat ground, and that is some of our best productive ground now.
The conservation practices that we promote, reduce tillage on the landscape, growing cover crops to keep that soil from moving, are very effective at reducing nitrate nitrogen from leaking into groundwater. It's very effective at keeping soil in the field where it belongs, and the nutrients in the soil so the crop can grow.
I always say it's everyone's responsibility to take care of our water resources, so it's important that we work together. It's not one person that's responsible for it.
Obviously, for the lakeshore owners, they want to be able to enjoy the lakes, and for the farmers' sake, I mean, we want to keep the planet as healthy and vibrant as we can, and protect it. I mean, it is our livelihood and income source is this, healthy soils, and so we want to work together with people to mutually benefit and take care of everything.
Well, when we found this property, we knew that we wanted to do what was right for the lake, and this property was never developed, never built on. So I like flowers, I like plants, and we knew that was healthy for the lake, and that's where it all began.
And I think that balance is really important. We want people to enjoy the lake, but we also want to protect it.
I want to do my best as a farmer to care for the water that's heading into that lake, but also I see what the impact it has as a lakeshore owner. So I want to also do my best for what's important for the lakeshore quality and what impacts owning a place on the lakeshore property.
All right, this is a group effort. It's not one side or the other that stands to gain or lose from the practices that we're talking about putting in place that ultimately are going to lead to cleaner water and better soil.
Lakeshore owners can do other things other than native plantings for their property. They can maintain their septic systems. They also can limit their use, or at least be more selective with their use of fertilizer and pesticides. So we're trying to prevent that from going into the lake. There's quite a bit of different best management practices that folks can do.
So we were just thankful that we had LeSueur County and other organizations help us with the direction and education on what to do at the shoreline.
So if you are interested in getting more conservation practices on your land, feel free to reach out to your local soil and water conservation district for assistance. They are there to provide help and guidance as you move through it. We are passionate about this work because we all live downstream of somebody.
I got 3 little kids, and when you look at the big scale of it, I mean, yeah, it all flows to the same place eventually. I mean, it all meets up somewhere, and so I think everybody's got to do their part, because we all live downstream somewhere.
Ultimately, if we don't leave something for that next generation, what have we done to take care of the resources that we have?
We will not be here for 100 years, but hopefully our grandchildren and great-grandchildren will be enjoying the lakes in Minnesota. So I think if we all do our small piece of making healthier water, that legacy will continue.
Okay. So yeah, that just, makes a strong message. We all need to do our part. We all live downstream from someone. And that's basically what we've been up to at the Cannon River Watershed Joint Powers Organization. We're about on our 5-year mark. So, 5 years, we've been, a lot of that's been just trying and learning, especially this is a whole new process for everyone. And hopefully our next 5 years are even more successful. Ashley, do you have anything to add? Otherwise, we can open up to Q&A.
I am fine opening it up to Q&A.
Okay, I can start reading through, and Ashley and one of us will try to figure out who would answer. So the first question is, even though these studies funding have been ongoing, will some of the money be clawed back due to political and or budget issues at the state and federal level? So far, we have been told that our funding is staying the same. That 1.5 million. Now that everyone's kind of getting to they're completed the planning process and they're on the implementation, money is getting a little more tighter since the planning stage was cheaper than the implementation stage. But as of right now, we've been told 1.5 million. We do have to take that about every 2 years. When we decide on our funding, we do go up and work with legislators, just trying to show them the importance of what we're doing to hopefully not get that funding cut. Ashley, do you have any other input?
Yeah, I'd add that there's a lot of discussions that occur at the Clean Water Council. So, that council has representatives from multiple different sectors, including, soil and water conservation district representation. But the big picture goal is that initially we were all competing for these clean water funds through competitive grants. We came together and said, that's not an effective use of our time. So then we have these plans to show what our priorities are, and that's where the watershed-based implementation funding comes in. So that competitive pot has shrunk, which means that the WBIF watershed-based implementation funding pot has increased to get that money out for projects. But yes, decisions at Clean Water Council often too.
And let's see, next question is, how many feedlots in the Trout Brook watershed?
That's a very Dakota County specific question. There are registered feedlots. There are people that have animals that are not considered registered feedlots, depending upon size. So I'm not going to be able to say an exact number, but there is data out there. Pollution Control Agency does have GIS data available to look at, registered.
I think you can also just contact the county staff too.
Mm-hmm.
And then this will be for you, Ashley. In the discussion of internal versus external pollution sources in lakes, you mentioned an example of phosphorus being in the sediment. Is this naturally occurring phosphorus, or did it come from prior runoff, or both?
Yep, good question. Cannon does have a study done on a number of lakes that looks at the sediment sources. So there is a study out there, but usually we're looking at sediment that has come into the system through runoff. And then you can analyze that sediment for, the amount of phosphorus that is potentially there. And then, there's limnologists who look at that. The dissolved oxygen is a factor in the water column and the temperature and everything too. And that's what can kind of flip that lake and release some of that phosphorus out of the sediment. And even curly leaf pondweed is a big factor in these nutrient cycling within lakes. So it's very complex system. But yeah, we have some studies that look at sourcing, and typically it is coming into our systems from runoff. And that's it on that one.
So what were the lakes that were priority sampling in the plan? So those, we didn't actually sample any lakes ourselves. The MPCA had those sampled, and that's the ones that they chose. I don't have that exact list. They tried to do an even number of lakes like that reflected the demographic of lakes in the area. But like I said, there is a lot of lakes that are missing data. I will say, I think LeSueur County has most of their lakes missing data, and they've been working hard already to work with lake associations and residents to get that lake data. Rice County, we have about 9 lakes that are missing data, so we'll be working with them. Waseca, I believe, has 1 or 2. And Ashley, I don't know if you probably don't know off the top of your head what lakes that were the priority sampling from MPCA. I don't.
Yep. Yeah, I think they're looking at the watershed as a whole too. And we obviously don't have NPCA here, so I don't want to speak too much for them, but yeah.
Yep, and those lakes will, the lake sampled will be identified in the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, their RAPS, which will be coming out this summer, and that's their watershed restoration and protection strategies, and that will reflect what lakes they currently sampled. I believe all their lakes were the same that they sampled their first. They're around 10 years prior to that. So that is where you can find it if you just type in Cannon River Watershed RAPS report. How much does cover crops reduce phosphorus and or nitrogen?
We do have models and research to show us. I don't think it can necessarily be like a blanket statement, but let's say for our plan, we have used 2 different modeling efforts in the Cannon plan. One of them is that HSPF model that I was talking about. That's run through the Pollution Control Agency. We also have a model called the PTM app, the Prioritized Target and Measure app, and that can give us some practice scale reductions. So we do use those tools to calculate our pollutant reduction numbers. I don't know if that's going to give you exactly what you're looking for, but that's what we're doing. And that's very similar to what let's do.
And Ashley, I believe, right, if they look at our map, they can click on those different points on the website to see those different reductions, or not?
I don't know if we put
those
directly in that map, but we're tracking on the grants side. So each grant, we're kind of tallying up a total reduction number.
Okay. There's a question if we're available to share the video we just showed. Yes, it is on our YouTube website. If you just go into YouTube, type in Cannon River Watershed Joint Powers Organization, you can find that. We also have some small clips, focused mostly, there's some on just the farmer side, there's some just on the shoreline side. So yes, that's available for anyone to use. We highly encourage if you want to use it. We do have it, I believe we've been sharing it on some media postings also. We want the word out there. We've also done some other education outreach campaigns through KTTC, and those are free to use too. Those focused on septics and on shoreline plantings also. Will we be looking at adjusting our priority lakes while we are in our first 10 years of the total 30-year plan? Currently, with our first 10 years here, within the 10 years, no, we're not looking at doing any plan amendments. There hasn't been anything brought to our attention that is worth changing our current priorities. Something else to think about is if everyone's a priority, then no one's a priority. So we don't want to make everyone a priority because then, well, what's the point of our plan? And at that 10-year mark, we will sit down and assess from data from everyone, do we want to keep those same, like our first round, our first 10 year, we chose those priority lakes from the protected and those nearly barely impaired. We could look at, there's some watershed plans that have a recreational focus. So it just based off what we're seeing from partner agencies and public input. Ashley, I don't know if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, just that, staff are not just making these decisions on their own. There's a reason we have a joint powers board. So any concerns can come to that board. And, when we look at if we're going to change priorities, some of our funding agencies might ask the question, well, have you addressed the priorities that you said you were going to do initially? And we can't necessarily say, yes to being done with everything that we said we were going to do in the first 10 years yet. So it's can be hard to look at shifting those priorities if you haven't had that time to do what you said you were going to do in those other priority areas.
And then the last question, can you comment on the impact of the fields with farm drainage tile, both in terms of nutrient pollution and increased flooding potential of rivers?
Kind of a big one too. So, some of the practices that we can implement can address some of these concerns. So, when we talk about nutrient pollution, we can do in-field management practices like the cover crops. For drainage tile specifically, you can do edge of field treatment, and there are some edge of field treatment systems. In the Cannon River watershed, there's some saturated buffers and denitrifying bioreactors out there. So that's the drain tile, nutrient pollution, potential flooding of rivers. That's a harder one for me to specifically say, but there's research out there, looking at river systems as a whole that kind of addresses that question as well. So I don't know if I have a Cannon specific study or anything to reference for you though.
And some of that may come out with our Upper Cannon flood study too. We don't have the results of that yet. Those will come out this summer, and that may identify if some of that's contributing to flooding.
All right. Well, thank you both. I did jump on the Cannon River, the map that you showed of the projects, and yeah, I guess average people like us can't quite access it, so it asks for a sign in, and then I can get past that, but then it doesn't actually show the data on the map when that comes in. So it must be an access level thing or something, maybe.
Maybe are you accessing it through the JPO website?
Yes.
Actually, when I tried earlier today, it wasn't showing layers.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, we do have an issue going on with our database then, so that is something that we'll have to talk to our GIS folks about. Thanks for finding that.
Yeah,
And then,
for sure.
as always with the Cannon, depending on where you're at, you can always reach out to your local soil and water county to find out more about maybe how the Cannon group can help you, if you want, or you can reach out to Ashley and myself too.
Perfect. Is there anything else that you wanted to add, Ashley, here before we wrap it up?
Don't think so. I was seeing if I was having the same issues, and it's still loading for me, so we'll just address that at a later date.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, thank you both, and thank you everybody that joined us for today and all the other videos that we had in this Land to Lake lecture series. So that kind of wraps us up for this season, and I'm sure we'll kick it back off again in October. But keep your eye out on Facebook pages and all that stuff. Cannon River Watershed Joint Powers Organization does different events throughout the year, so this isn't the end of us. You'll definitely see more information coming out, and so just really appreciate everybody's time today.
Yep, and I will quickly plug, there is a woman in conservation event for Rice County coming up on April 1st at 5:30 at the Rice County Fairgrounds. It's just women. It's more of a one-on-one relaxed event. So yeah, if you want to check that out, that kind of helps connect to our Cannon group.
Perfect. All right. Well, with that, we'll wrap it up and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.